The stronger gun control you have, the less gun deaths you have.
If gun control actually did work, Washington, D.C. and Chicago would be the safest cities in your nation.
Preventing dangerous people from getting guns is very possible.
We've got to protect our children, we've got to protect our police, we've got to protect our population.
The laws that we have in place are working, we just need to make them better.
It's true that no law is going to stop every shooting.
But we might still have some more Americans with us.
I think we need to ban gun control laws that keep people from being able to protect themselves.
The Janet Reno Department of Justice under President Clinton said the assault weapons ban was singularly ineffective.
Criminals don't care, and that is the point.
I can't think of a single place where a mass shooting has occurred where guns were allowed. These people look for fish in a barrel.
Tonight we have Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clarke and Leah Gunn Barrett, Executive Director of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence. Thanks for joining us. Sheriff Clarke, are gun laws useless?
I don't know that that's the right question. I think the question is, do we have the will to enforce what's already on the books? And once we start to address that small segment of the population that actually uses a gun to either take property or commit an assault or intimidate, then I think we're going to make progress in this violence reduction effort, if that is what the real issue is here. But I think this is more about a political agenda than anything else.
What is the real issue?
The real issue should be, how do we reduce violence? And you do that by going after the perpetrators of violence, who in my 38 years on the street, I'm still on the street, they have long criminal histories, they have previous gun violations on their arrest records that are either wiped away or they're dismissed as part of some plea agreement. So we're sending the wrong message to the perpetrators of violence with firearms, that something bad will happen to them should they be caught using them in the commission of a crime.
I've got a sordid list of mass shootings over the past 2 decades with me here, and I can go through them, and we'll touch upon them in a bit. But besides those massive events, right? Just in the past few days alone, taking note of the news. In Rochester, 3 killed, 4 wounded in a drive-by shooting at a Boys and Girls Club. In Ferguson, a 9-year-old girl was shot while doing her homework in her mom's bed, and her mom was wounded. In your city, Milwaukee, there have been 100 homicides so far this year, the majority of them 82 shootings. Are these all just done by that small minority of people you're talking about? There's a big problem.
Well, without a doubt, though, that it's done by a small segment of the population. Most of the research done on crime kind of bears that out. So what I try to do here in this two-sided debate about gun control is, let's focus on the behavior.
Okay, let's focus on the behavior, Leah Gunn Barrett.
Well, your question, are gun laws useless? My answer to that would be some promote gun death and injury, and some actually save lives. So let me give you some examples of gun laws that work. Okay. Background checks on all gun sales to make sure guns don't fall into the hands of criminals, domestic abusers, terrorists, or seriously mentally ill. New York State has universal background checks. The country does not. New York State has the 3rd lowest gun death rate in the nation. Our gun deaths have been declining 4 years in a row. Nationally, they've been increasing 6%. We don't have background checks at the federal level. Congress has stymied that, along with the NRA, every step of the way. That's one thing. Anti-gun trafficking laws, making it a federal offense, making trafficking a felony. Right now, someone who traffics guns gets the same penalty as someone who traffics a chicken. That's outrageous. Laws that don't work, that promote death and injury, stand your ground laws. There are now 26 states that have passed these shoot first laws, which have reversed the traditional retreat in face of a threat, which people have always traditionally done in this country. And in those states, like Florida, that have these laws, you see gun deaths increasing as a result. And George Zimmerman, by the way, still has his gun license.
Okay, let's, talking about laws that do work, I'm intrigued that you didn't mention the assault weapons ban, because do you agree that it doesn't work?
I'm happy to mention it. No, I do not agree with that. The federal ban expired in 2004. The part of it that worked best was limiting high-capacity magazines. They were limited to 10 rounds. Now you can buy 30, 40, 100-round magazines on the market. These are military-purposed weapons. They were designed for the military for battlefield conditions, and they've been used by mass shooters because they're effective at killing people rapidly, very quickly.
The Justice Department's definitive study said that they found no evidence that it reduced overall gun crime or made shootings less lethal.
The FBI has said that since 2011, mass shootings have risen almost 3 times. They've almost tripled. And we know that high-capacity magazines are used in an awful lot of these mass shootings. But don't forget, most gun deaths occur not from assault weapons. They come from handguns. They come from suicides. Nearly 2/3 of all gun deaths are suicides.
Why is it that laws didn't stop Dylan Roof in Charleston from buying a gun, or the Lafayette gunman John Russell Hauser, who passed a background check, or Mohammed Yusuf Abdulaziz, Chattanooga? I mean, I could go on. I've got a list of all of them.
Absolutely.
They broke the law to do what they wanted to do and kill people.
In the case of Charleston and the others that you mentioned, the information on these people had not been entered into the background check system. There was a miscommunication, and because Congress limits the time to clear a background check to just 3 days, and after 3 days you don't have an answer on someone seeking to buy a gun, they go ahead and get the gun. It should be the other way around. You should extend that period until you can make absolutely certain that that person should not have a gun. So, you know, states need to put the right information into the system in order for it to work. Garbage in, garbage out. The case of the Virginia Tech shooter, Cho, he should not have been able to buy a gun either. Virginia hadn't bothered putting the information in. So Congress needs to appropriate more money so that states can actually follow the law that does exist to reduce these incidences of people who shouldn't be having guns getting them in their hands.
Sheriff Clarke, it seems as if the vast majority of Americans do want more comprehensive background checks, even 79% of Republicans, according to a Pew poll, more than 80% of Democrats. But Congress doesn't pass this. Doesn't this suggest the power of the lobby and the fact that the politicians are out of touch with what the people want?
I don't think it does that at all. One of the reasons is this concept of comprehensive background checks. It's also called universal background check. A wonderful sounding name, right? Who wouldn't be for that? The problem is when it's polled, it's asked in a way that the person who's answering the poll doesn't really understand what a universal background check
Why
would
not
mean.
dig a little deeper and find out a bit more about the person who wants to buy a gun?
Well, here's the reason. Because once you start to break that down, what that really means, most states will not enter mental health. And that's a certain segment of this argument here. How do we keep handguns out of the, and firearms out of the hands of people who are judged mentally ill? Because the overwhelming majority of people who are mentally ill would never do something like take a rifle into a church or into a movie theater or into a school and start spraying bullets all over the place. That's an insult to the mentally ill to think that that population is more susceptible to that type of behavior than anybody else. Everybody knows somebody who suffers from some sort of mental illness, all right, who would never think about that. Does their information, and I'm just throwing this out there, does mental health information belong in a criminal database? The mentally ill, for the most part, the overall majority, are not criminals. So trying to get this comprehensive database is going to be very problematic. But here's the thing here is the criminal is always going to find a way around any law or any background check or any other system that we set up. And I think that that's the big issue.
Well, the logic for that is then why have laws at all? You're arguing for a state of anarchy. Why should we have speeding laws since the criminals are going to speed or people are going to break the speed limit? Why should we have laws against murder since people are going to continue to kill each other? I mean, come on, that's a silly argument. The whole point of laws is that they prevent people from doing things to other people, and keeping guns out of dangerous hands is something that I think society would agree on, and most Americans do agree. The background checks to make sure people who have violent criminal histories, who have been adjudicated mentally ill, who are domestic abusers, who are terrorists, should not get their hands on guns. And time after time, this has happened because we do not have background checks across the country. You can buy a gun on the internet without a background check. You can get it at a gun show. You can have a private sale. So that's why guns are falling into the wrong hands. Al-Qaeda has even said they can come gun shopping in America. These guys said, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
How many of those guns are found to be involved in some of the street violence that we're talking about right now? The ones that are bought on the internet, the ones that are bought without a...
The Wisconsin spa shooting in your state, sir, when that man went in and killed his wife and her co-workers at the spa, he bought his gun on armslist.com on the internet because he couldn't buy one legally.
Well,
so that's the problem, is you need background checks on all gun sales.
You were attacked by the NRA for allegedly saying last year that there is, quote, no such thing as a law-abiding gun owner.
I did not say that. Was taken out of context. I was giving a talk at an NYU history class, and I was talking to Scott Bach, who's a National Rifle Association board director, and we were talking about gun laws in New York State, and mentioning that he said that you have to keep guns out. You have to arm people because there are a lot of evil people around. This is the NRA argument. And my point was that everyone who has a gun, before they commit a crime, of course, are by definition law-abiding. And you can be law-abiding and still lose your temper and in a domestic violence situation. You can have an unintentional shooting incident. You can be like George Zimmerman, who was so-called law-abiding before he shot Trayvon Martin, an unarmed, defenseless black man. So the point is that our society is awash in guns. That's one of the problems. Is there are guns almost for every single person in this country, 300 million. The United States has 30% of the population of comparable OECD countries, and we have 90% of the gun homicides.
And to add to that point, Sheriff Clarke, Michael Bloomberg has said very often, we are the only industrialized country that has this problem in the whole world, the only one. You know, there's approximately 350 million firearms owned by over 100 million Americans in this country. Why is this happening here? Why are kids getting shot up unintentionally?
Is it the price of freedom?
Because of behavior. All right, we're talking about somebody who would take a firearm.
Kids are curious.
Somebody who would take a firearm and use it against a human being, not in an accidental shooting, but an intentional act, is a behavior problem. It's not a firearms problem. And I'll go back to the fact that the overwhelming majority of those 100 million people who may own guns, I've heard 100, anywhere up to 150 million gun owners in the United States.
It's actually 32% of all American households. It's been falling since the 1970s.
Take that firearm and use it against another human being to take property,
so
to
comparing the United States to other countries, do Americans behave differently to the rest of the world? Is there something pathologically wrong here? Is there a psychosis? Is that the issue?
The problem is there are too many guns.
I will point to John Lott did a recent study.
Oh my God, he's so discredited.
John Lott did a recent study.
You've got to be kidding me.
And in the UK, when they went to a total handgun ban, within the 8 years following that, homicides went up 50% with a total handgun ban.
That is
wrong.
Why
is that? Why is that? It's because the criminal is always going to find a way around the law, no matter how tight you make it. All this does is frustrates law-abiding people. And the criminal perpetrator is still going to have access to a gun come hell or high water, through a straw purchase, through a theft, through a burglary, through a black market.
So let's
and if
try
you think
not to
that
keep
people
them out of
on
their
the
hands,
black market
let's
are going to
facilitate.
conduct background checks, well, then we're pretty naive here.
Okay, quick response from Leah before we take.
Well, the NRA has consistently, well, before they were for background checks, now they're against them. So you have to ask, why are they against something that would prevent guns from getting into the wrong hands?
We're going to take a break. We'll come back with more coming up. We're joined by a Democratic member of the Florida House of Representatives who wants guns on campus.
When I was in college, I was the victim of an attempted rape. I was able to get to my gun. I was able to hold off the attacker.
There has been a shooting in the library.
Students there that have stopped the shooter.
I don't think that people's rights to defend themselves should stop at the line of a college campus.
Guns don't make our campus safer.
Supporters say it's all about self-defense.
The gun-free zone signs aren't going to stop someone who's carrying a weapon illegally.
People that say, oh, well, I would have shot him that day and I would have ended it, I don't really think are thinking everything through.
The police are the ones who should be holding guns, not students.
Welcome back. Joining us now is Representative Michelle Raywinkle-Vasalinda, a Democratic member of the Florida House of Representatives representing the 9th District, who's recently voted to allow concealed weapons to be carried on college campuses. Thanks for joining us, Michelle. It's a trend we've seen across the country. You want Florida to become one of nearly a dozen states to allow concealed weapons on campus. You're a professor as well,
yes,
right? You know the culture on campus. The drinking, the partying, the men with egos fighting over girls, all sorts of things going on. You want to add weapons into that situation?
Well, I want to add concealed weapon permit holders to be able to have their guns legally on campus. And that's the difference. We have laws in Florida to allow 21-year-olds and above who have specific requirements and meet those requirements to take guns on campus. And I think that would be fine, and I actually think it would make people safer. And I'm very concerned about women. We have a rape culture where 1 out of 5 women get sexually assaulted on our campuses in this country. And I think if women were trained on guns, and those women who choose to have guns could prevent rapes.
This is personal for you.
Yes, it's
Tell
very
us why.
personal. When I was in college, I was the victim of an attempted rape. I was able to get to my gun. I was able to hold off the attacker, and he left. And I thank God that I had that ability, that my father had given me a gun, had trained me on a gun, that I was comfortable using it, didn't have to shoot, but would have been willing to. And I think that women need to have personal protection strategies. Some women will not want to use a gun, won't be willing to use a gun, and you have to be willing to shoot if you're going to do that. And I think that this is one of the strategies.
Leah Gunn Barrett, does that convince you at all? That we need more weapons on campus?
No, of course not. I mean, I think the incident, I'm sorry for what happened to you, but I believe it happened off campus. I mean, our college campuses are some of the safest places in the nation. And why would we want to change that? I mean, I have a daughter who's a sophomore in college, and I would never send her to a place which allows concealed guns on campus.
Our campuses are not the safest places in
the country. Well, if I could finish, there have been no homicides on Florida college campuses, whereas there have been homicides off of the campuses in those cities.
There's been plenty of sexual assaults.
Sexual assault is different, but you know, you're usually sexually assaulted by somebody that you know, and there's usually alcohol involved. And if you put guns, alcohol, frat parties in the mix, then that's incredibly toxic.
I met Amanda Collins, who when she was 25, she's a little older now, not that much, was a student at the University of Nevada, Reno. She was a concealed carry holder in the state of Nevada. Did not carry on campus. She was taking night courses to complete her degree. Did not do it. Why? Because law-abiding people obey the law. Amanda Collins was attacked walking to her car in the parking lot at the university, brutally raped 50 yards from the campus police department. Amanda Collins, who I met personally and talked to, said the state of Nevada took my right away to be able to defend myself. Who was the only safe person on that college campus that night? The rapist with a firearm.
And an illegal firearm, I'm assuming, as well.
Gun-free zones get people hurt and killed
Sheriff Clarke,
unnecessarily.
you want people to take the initiative, right? During your last campaign for sheriff, you ran an ad telling residents to, quote, consider taking a certified safety course in handling a firearm. You have a duty to protect yourself and your family. Tom Barrett, the mayor of Milwaukee, said you were auditioning for the next Dirty Harry movie.
Yeah, Tom Barrett was returning home from the state fair with his family several summers ago, and he intervened in a domestic dispute on the street. A guy picked up a tire iron and beat Tom Barrett within inches of his life. I would like to think that Tom Barrett, if he would have had a firearm, things would have turned out differently. He didn't have that armed security around him that day. I think he'd be a little more sensitive to the plight of individuals who want to be able to defend themselves should that situation
Sheriff
arise.
Clarke, I just want to know how come there's been such a big change with you? Because looking back at some of the stuff you said in 2003, Wisconsin considered a bill to loosen restrictions on the private carrying of firearms. You urged the government to veto, saying there were better ways to fight crime than to flood the streets with dangerous weapons, and in urban Milwaukee it would jeopardize the safety of my deputies and the citizens they represent. You had a radical conversion. How did that happen? Why did that happen?
There came a point in time in the Milwaukee area when the police could no longer keep up with the calls for service, the 911 calls. There was no more proactive policing in neighborhoods that could keep crime and violence in check. It was at that point that I said, if the government cannot guarantee the personal safety of its citizens, then they must provide the citizen with the tools so that they can do it themselves, and that was the concealed carry license.
And
That's when I had that
logically, in my particular situation, there was no way a policeman or a sheriff was going to help me in that situation. I had to take that responsibility to protect myself. And my whole idea as a policymaker here is to balance some issues. We do have problems with rape on campus and sexual assault on campus. I am very concerned about young women and their ability to equalize the power force against men who would do them harm.
You talk about balance. I mean, isn't there a balance between those guidelines that are being issued to students, which say that if somebody comes on campus with a gun, you throw pencils at them or a laptop or whatever it is, those fairly ridiculous things? Isn't there a balance between that and having students who are actually armed? How about stronger campus police? How about security guards on campus? Isn't there something in the middle here?
Right, but our campuses are open in the United States, and I think that's important too. And what we're talking about here is allowing people who are concealed weapons permit holders, who have an infinitesimal degree of crime within that group, within that universe. And I think we need to really be logical and think and be less hysterical about these kinds of things. There have been other states that have allowed concealed weapons on campuses, and there has not been a huge increase in crime.
Actually, college presidents across the board are against it. 94%.
College presidents also are not protecting young women on campuses.
When you have when Amanda Collins was brutally raped, where was that?
In Utah, when they allowed guns on campus, the first incident was a chemistry professor shooting himself in the foot during a chemistry class full of students.
And when you have 20% of the women who are raped or sexually assaulted on our campuses in the United States,
think about it, though.
I think that's something that the presidents need to be very, very concerned about.
When women are raped on college campuses, they're raped in situations where they know the rapist in most cases. It's maybe they've been drinking alcohol. Most likely they've been drinking after. I'm not blaming the victim. I'm not saying a gun would solve the problem. Women are not physically powerful like men are. A gun could easily be turned. A gun could easily be turned on the woman, and it is frequently. Putting guns into
to protect themselves.
That is not the issue.
Okay.
If
you'll allow me to ask Leah a question. Leah, is there ever the notion of self-defense for you? Can we have the notion of defending yourself with a weapon against an attack, whether on campus or elsewhere?
Well, yes. I mean, the Supreme Court says it's perfectly legal to have a gun in your home for self-defense purposes. But when you're carrying guns out in public, even look in the 19th century. I come from Kansas.
Okay, but that's okay. Let me so say, if Newtown wasn't a gun-free zone, maybe the attacker would have been stopped.
In the 19th century, we had stronger gun laws than we do in the 21st century. You couldn't bring guns past the city limit in Dodge City,
Do you agree that if somebody had a gun in the Charleston church, then maybe Dylan Roof would have been stopped?
No, I do not agree. But it didn't do her much good when she was on that college campus. You're not going to have a bunch of...
Are you encouraging everyone to bring guns into their churches, into their theaters? What kind of... Really the question is,
what kind of society, already have
what kind of society do we want to live in? I think that is the overarching question.
Don't encourage it.
Do we want Americans to be armed? It's the NRA. It is not. It's not unlimited. Even the Supreme Court has not said that the Second Amendment is not an unlimited right.
But I trust law-abiding people, to possess firearms for shooting sports, hunting, recreational use, self-defense, and government tyranny. I trust people with that Second Amendment right.
Explain your fear of government tyranny.
Well, one of them is slavery, and I'm glad that you brought that up because
we don't have slavery anymore, Sheriff.
You know why we don't have? Because we finally allowed newly freed slaves to possess firearms. That was what the 14th Amendment originally was all about.
Clarke, are you honestly saying that you fear slavery coming back?
Not slavery. I fear government tyranny.
How?
Yes.
There are some slaves in the United States also.
Just as restrictions on the Constitution, there's restriction on the Second Amendment. Any country that formed a dictatorship, you know what the first thing they did was? You disarm the people, you control the media.
Well, you've said before at an NRA forum, you warned of a second American Revolution if gun control and confiscation passes, adding you would not enforce laws requiring confiscation of any kind of firearm in your country. So you're a sheriff. Isn't it your job to uphold the law instead of starting revolutions or maybe hoping for them?
Uphold the law? First of all, that is part of it's a civic duty of every citizen in the United States of America to play a role in that. And I see it as a force multiplier. We're not omnipresent in the United States with our police. I don't want police to be omnipresent. I don't want to be a police state. I don't want a police officer on every corner. So citizens have to play a role in that. One of the ways that we encourage citizens to play a role is allow them the freedoms under the Constitution, including the Second Amendment, to be able to participate in their own personal defense.
What if the tyranny is only in their heads?
The first line of defense is with the citizen. But if they don't have the means with which to protect themselves like Amanda Collins did in that night, then it's all for naught. That's why I said any discussion about gun control has to pass constitutional muster, and it has to be achievable. And some of the stuff that we talk about, like getting all guns off the street, or this universal background check that no one will ever be able to buy a law.
But there's a difference between universal background check and getting all guns off the street.
It's not achievable.
I'd like to go back to the concealed weapons permit holders. That is a universe of human beings who have a very, very low rate of crime.
You mean
and
like George
violent
Zimmerman?
crime.
He has a concealed weapons.
You know
permit.
what? That's one guy.
There are
That's
several.
one guy.
If you look at a VPC dated report on concealed carry killers, there are a number of people with concealed weapons licenses who've committed homicide.
But if we go down your logical path, what you are actually
If we go down your
thinking
logical path, everyone should be armed. And let's cut to the chase here. What's
what
really
you're
at
saying
issue
is
is the
that no
National
one should be
Rifle
armed.
Association wants to sell more guns.
I'll let that be the final word because we have run out of time. I'm riveted by this, but we're out of time. Sheriff David Clarke, Leah Gunn Barrett, and Florida Representative Michelle Raywinkle Vasalinda, thank you so much.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.